was a giant. It was managed by 24 directors, but they went bust. Yeah, the playing field. So I think it takes a bit of both. But
as you know, that in Fiji there's been a plethora of changes that have taken place in respect of the new laws being introduced, new standards, new companies being formed, divestment of government interest in state-owned enterprises. And of course, there's been also a number of foreign business coming to Fiji, which means that we need to lift up our game. But before I actually talk about specifically about the government per se, I think it's important to understand what the strategy of the government is. The strategy, of course, is that we believe it's a small island nation, not even 1 million people. We are not necessarily surrounded by large populated countries, which can give you a number of sort of advantages in terms of having economies of scale, be able to attract investment. So you need to be actually strategic about it. So one of the ways that we have thought that we as a country, as a government, can actually attract investment in Fiji is the ability to adhere to internationally accepted standards. Whether it's in environmental laws, whether it's in labor laws, whether it's in terms of governance issues pertaining to the transparency of the executive, in terms of the civil service, the ability to adapt to the digital age, and also, of course, in respect of the governance of your various institutions. Because if you actually are able to stand up on international stage, even on the domestic stage, to say, look, we have this adherence to international standards, then it makes you look more attractive in respect of investment. If you have laws, you have a judicial system that is a lot more transparent, the rules are actually very clear, whether it's in respect of, say, FCCC. If you're an investor, I need to know that if I'm going to invest, for example, in a company that may be subject to the rules of FCCC, are the price determinations, for example, carried out by FCCC done in a transparent manner, or is it subject to political influence? I mean, these are the kinds of things that people look at as investors when they look at a country for investment. Specifically in respect of government per se, as you know that you have statutory provisions regarding declaration of interest and your fiduciary duty as directors under the Companies Act. I don't know how many are aware, but we recently also just tabled a bill on Monday in Parliament, and we've asked for it to be fast-tracked to go to the committee stage and come back to Parliament the next sitting of May to look at the Public Enterprise Act. Completely, the idea is to repeal the existing Public Enterprise Act, and with the help and assistance of ADB, we've now come up with a new act, which is in form of a bill at the moment, to again introduce certain standards in respect of directors who sit on state-owned enterprises. I think, sometimes we have the independent jurisdictions also. We may be good at putting down statutory provisions, but it's also how you implement it, indeed whether you do implement it in the first place or not. And sometimes, I have, for example, worked in the private sector, where we had, accounting firms that had, they were doing the auditors of a particular company, but they had family members that were working in the company in which they were auditing. Now, the auditor's manual or guidelines specifically said you cannot audit a firm if a person in the company in which you're auditing holds a senior position. Now, notwithstanding that particular provision, it did not have statutory provision, it was not a statute, but nonetheless it was a guideline for the auditors. Yet, blatantly it was not adhered to. It was overlooked. So I think sometimes, when you are, in a smaller jurisdiction, sometimes you tend to overlook this. Very it's become more the norm as opposed to being the exception. So it's your responsibility as directors, whether you're sitting on state-owned enterprises, whether you're sitting as board member of state-owned enterprises, whether you're sitting outside, in order for you to be able to fulfill your fiduciary relationship or duty, you need to actually ensure that you're not simply subscribing to the law, but also implementing the law. There's a lot of individual onus that rests upon you as director to come forth, be forthright, declare interest, for example, and to be able to draw a very clear nexus between your interest and what perhaps may be discussed at the board level itself. And I think that's very, very critical. And also, I'd like to respect to IFC that these things are great, but I think we need to have a continuation of these sorts of that ethos actually going through the system itself. I had a brief meeting yesterday with the Deputy Human Rights Commissioner of the UN, and we were discussing about the fact how yes, we may have had some issues post 2006, but suddenly the government is sort of shot ahead in respect of the application of human rights. Others from the non-governmental organizations are still catching up with the advances that we made. And she said, so what do you need? I said, well, you don't necessarily need any more laws. What you actually need is the capacity within the different agencies that may have an impact on a person's rights. So, to give you an example, if the police are not trained to carry out sophisticated modern-day investigations like the technology, forensics, etc., then the old way of doing police is a confession. And how do you get a confession? Use physical methods. So if we don't build capacity within the police force themselves to be able to actually implement that particular requirement, the international standards, and indeed even the laws, then they won't be able to do it. In the same way as directives, you need to actually have those tools and the training and the exposure, and you need to be able to network amongst yourselves as to how you can become better directives, as to how you can actually implement the law. And I think that's very, very critical. And I don't know, to be frank, I do not know whether all of you regularly meet at the domestic level. Whether there's a chapter of directors in Suva or a chapter of directors in Notoka, etc., and whether you meet on a regular basis. Because, again, when you're in a smaller society, there's the issue of gifts. How do you handle gifts? What gifts do you give back? What gifts do you declare? What gifts do you don't take? These are the sorts of things. I mean, I've had some personal experiences, although I'm not a director myself. I mean, I've had directors of companies coming into my office and, saying, oh, there's a little something for the office, or there's a little something for you. The last one that I had was somebody said, there's a little something for you, so I was very busy with the meeting, I did not take any attention. So when they left, it was actually a Mont Blanc pen. There was a limited edition, and I checked online, it's worth about $5,000 to $6,000. So I rang them up immediately, and I said to the director, look, please come and take this away. It's not acceptable. No, you can keep it. Okay, if you don't use it, maybe the office can use it. So I could have actually said, okay, well, that's fine. I'll give it to one of my top performing staff, one of the top performing lawyers, I can give it to them. But I insisted upon it being returned. So, I mean, sure, many of you have similar situations could arise. Some of you may be sitting on boards. I mean, I've seen some people from FNPF. They have a number of subsidiary companies. You have Pigeon Holdings, which is a blue chip company. You have a number of directors on those boards. I mean, how is there general policy in your company surrounding these rules? What are the SOPs surrounding that for directors? So, I think, the gist of what I'm trying to say is that the laws are there, but I think we need to actually be able to implement it. And you need to be able to critically look at how you, as an individual, also are fulfilling financial relationship. Are you, for example, good mates with the CEO, in order for you to be able to, maybe stay on the board, you agree to everything the CEO says or does? Or is there a group of you, perhaps you may, think that your directorship is coming to an end, and therefore to retain the directorship, maybe we can do a few things and please a few people, and go along with particular decisions so I can retain my directorship. I can see that happening in many places. So I think, you need to critically evaluate yourself. And the other point that I also wanted to make also is that you need to understand the board on which you sit, the organization in which you are serving. What is the purpose of that organization? What is the mandate of that organization? And are you fulfilling that requirement? Are you actually furthering the direction of that particular organization? I've just recently come across a couple of companies without mentioning their names, where they actually have subsidiary companies, or they have 100% owned companies. Now, one company at the expense of perhaps not making better profits for themselves or getting a better position in the market, they were doing that so they could help the other company of theirs. Now, that is unacceptable. In fact, that's a breach of the law. So they were foregoing their own company gaining more profits because the larger sister company wanted them to do something else. The question then arises, what are the directors doing? The director's responsibility and fiduciary duty is not to the related company or the sister company or the brother company, whatever the case may be. Your fiduciary duty is to the company or the board on which you serve. Period. That's it. And that is a very, in fact, a growing problem, I think, in Fiji, because you have a number of companies that are related to each other. Limited liability companies are related to each other. You can have subsidiary companies, and again, so there's some grey areas in respect of subsidiary companies. And what are the duties and responsibilities of board members, and who may actually be sitting on the parent company, but also sitting as a board member on the subsidiary company. So sometimes there are actually conflicts. So how do you manage that? Do you even understand that needs to be managed? You have blue chip companies like Fijian Holdings, with a number of companies you have. FNPF, there's a number of companies that they have. I'm sure there are other companies that are here that may have subsidiary companies. So I think that is something you need to critically look at, and I hope that also with the IFC's assistant and the Institute's assistant, you are able to sort of further the discourse in the area, because I think there has not been a maturity, I must say, in the way that we approach these issues in Fiji, in particular with the directives. And that's something that needs to be addressed. So ladies and gentlemen, I don't want to linger on too much, but I just wanted to make those sort of, I think, some salient points in respect of how do we see ourselves as directives, what's our relationship with our subsidiary companies, what's our relationship with the management. We have, for example, I can tell you some of the statutory organizations, there has been a need in some of those companies where the board has actually probably had to play a much bigger role in the day-to-day functioning of the company because the management was so, abysmally defunct. And they had to be revamped. We, of course, in the wake of 2007, when we had a number of travel bans imposed upon us unnecessarily, we had very few people coming forward, so we had a number of people who actually sat on the multiplicity of boards, really for the reason because there weren't other people coming along. We had situations where we had executive chairs, and now we're moving away from that, because of course it poses its own problems too. So government is making its effort, and I think a number of you will be reaching out, like last week, the Prime Minister approved the appointment of a number of new board members. Some of you I see over here in this room. Now, one of the reasons why we're actually expanding the scope is because obviously we want more intellectual input into the different organizations, but also to have a cadre of people. Some of them, and some people have pointed out what may be considered in the comparison to the previous time, quite young, but we want to build that capacity in people. It's very, very important to do that. It's very important to recognize it. So I think, these are exciting times. And I think it can become extremely exciting if everybody is able to understand the enormity of the responsibility they have to the organization which they're supposed to serve. I thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I thank IFC for this. And indeed, I think the organization can work a lot more better and have more regular
deal with directors. I think you've got new companies out here, there's some new listing rules.
We just have a couple of questions here from the text platform.